All right. This is still section 5.1, 5.1b. We're talking about slope. So a couple of things. We read in math when we're looking at a picture from left to right. So here's a little person, maybe. And if we take this person and we were to walk on this line from left to right, you can look at it, and since he goes up, that's a positive slope. This one, since it goes down, that's a negative slope. If it goes straight across, that's a zero slope. Now, a zero slope is 0 divided by any number. So, for example, 0 divided by 2 is still 0. All zero slope means is it's a flat line. It doesn't rise or run as we go across. Then, of course, we have the vertical slope. If he tries to walk from left to right, he's going to fall. So that's why it has no slope, because this one, it might be like 3 over 0, some number over 0, but you can't divide by 0. The idea would be we have 3 things to split amongst 0 people. How many things does each person get? There aren't any people, so it can't be done. And we call that undefined, and that's a line you can't walk on. The other 3 you can walk on, so they have either a positive slope, a negative slope, or a zero slope, but this one is undefined. You can't walk on it. Okay, the equation for slope should be actually on the first page. Might have skipped one thing, so you might have to back up a little bit. The first page, I'm going to write it down here, should have had a slope of m equals, and it doesn't say m on the page, I don't believe, but y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now, what's important is, see, x2 and y2 are what we call an ordered pair. So if you had 2 numbers, say 2 comma 3, those 2 have to go together. So the ordered pairs have to go and be paired together, and the y1 and the x1 have to be paired together. So as we look at this in this first example, the slope for part A here in example 3, I guess it says, the slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now, a lot of students get caught up in thinking that the order matters. What you have to know is the y is the second coordinate. So the first thing you should be doing in one of these is you should either be taking 1 minus 0 or 0 minus 1. Now, I'm going to do 1 minus 0 for now. I'll come back to it. But since I started with 1, since I start with that one, in the bottom I have to take 2 and subtract 0. So that gets me 1 over 2, and that's the answer. That's my slope. Now, some students have an issue. They say, it's got to be the second one. It really doesn't matter. You would have taken 0 minus 1, and then since you started with this 0, you would have taken the 0 coordinate for the x and subtracted 2 and gotten negative 1 over negative 2, which reduces to a positive 1/2. Same thing. All right. So here, one of the important things to remember when doing these problems is that there's apparently I cannot write a line there. I don't know why it keeps skipping over. I'm going to try it again here. Sorry. There's a subtraction sign here. So I'm going to write this subtraction sign in. Then I'm going to do the rest in a different color for part B here. But I'm going to take one of the y's. So one of the y's is 5. Since that 5 is going on the top, that 6 has to go on the bottom. That's an ordered pair. It's 6 comma 5. But remember, the y's always have to go on top, so you have to start with that second coordinate. But then for the second number, since I started with 5, I'm going to subtract negative 3. And this is the tricky part. Why the 2 negatives? The negative that I have there in black came from the formula. The negative I have in red is coming from this number. In the bottom, I'm going to have 6 and subtract negative 2. So a negative times a negative is a positive. So a couple things you could do. You could rewrite it down here and say it's 5 plus 3 and then 6 plus 2, which gets us 8 over 8. What some students do instead of rewriting that is they just scribble out the two negatives and make it a positive. And then you're still going to get 8 over 8, and our slope in this one is 1. So one of the things I recommend doing so you don't mess up is always putting that negative sign in there. Remember, that's part of the formula, and then work it from there. So in this top, I would take 2 and subtract negative 3. And then since I started with that 2, I start with this 4 and subtract 4. And this one should get 2 plus 3, which is 5, over 0. And you can't divide by 0, so this one is what we call undefined. This would be a vertical line. You can't walk on it. Okay, so the next one. I do want you to show work as you're doing these. I'm going to put the two negative signs in there, then change color just to stay consistent here. And I'm going to take negative 3.5 and subtract the other one. Now, the other one is 6.5, so they didn't change. If you grab your calculator and you subtract those, you should get negative 10. Now, we'll do the bottom. Since we start with negative 3.5, we take 5.65. We subtract negative 3.35. This one is going to change to a positive. If we put those together, we get 9. So this one is negative 10 over 9. All right, I think it's time. You should pause the video, try these out. I'm going to go through them rather quickly as we do to try to keep the video short for those of you, if you have missed due to whatever reasons, illness or whatever might be going on, so you can catch up rather quickly. So I'm going to assume you've unpaused the video, and we're going to go through these and see what we get. So this one, 3 subtract 8. I started with this 3. Remember, it's always the y's. And then 7 minus 3. This one should get us negative 5 over 4. That's it. That's our slope. We're done. Got the two subtraction signs. We have negative 3, subtract negative 4. Since I start with that one, I go negative 6, subtract 8. This becomes a positive, so that becomes a positive 1. Negative 3 plus 4 is 1 over negative 14. Part G. Negative 3, subtract negative 3 over 5, subtract negative 1. Slope is 0. All right, this next one I'll slow down just a little bit. This one's got some fractions, so I'm going to take 4/7, which is the y-coordinate here. I'm going to subtract 3/7, and then 1/5 minus 2/5. Now, you could use some technology. You could use a computer. What this gets you, 4/7 minus 3/7 is 1/7. 1/5 minus 2/5 is negative 1/5. Now, if you're not familiar with fractions, if you divide by a fraction, you can multiply by its reciprocal, which is 5 over negative 1. Numerator times numerator is 5. Denominator times denominator, that's a 1, by the way, is negative 7. So this one becomes negative 5/7. Okay, if you walked up to a place where you're buying tickets for like a monster truck show or concert or whatever, and you have to decide what's the independent variable on your sheet. It asks for the independent variable, and what you would ask, you would say, or I want one ticket. So the independent variable is the number of tickets. That's what X would be. And what depends on the number of tickets, so the dependent variable, is the price. So $19.50 for one ticket. I'm going to write that as an ordered pair. The reason I'm talking about the independent variable is X, the dependent variable is Y. So I'm going to make the tickets X, and we have 4 tickets for $78 and one ticket for $19.50. And then I'm going to use that to find the slope. So now the slope is 78. Remember, again, we start with the y, subtract 1950. You could, of course, do it in the opposite order, 1950 minus 78, but then you do it in an opposite order on the bottom. And what we get here is 5850 over 3. If we divide that by 3, we get 1950, and that's our slope. And what does that mean? That means it's $19.50 per ticket. And it goes up that each time you buy another ticket. Okay, so the late fee is $2 regardless of how many days the movie is late. So the independent variable is the number of days. So how many days you forget to bring this movie back. In the old days, these when people rented movies, I guess some still do on Redbox, I guess, maybe. Dependent variable is the price you got to pay. So it doesn't give us anything to set it up, but let's say you're 1 day late. It says it's $2 no matter what, regardless. That's what that means. So you pay $2. Well, if we're 2 days late, we pay $2. Why? It's $2 no matter what. So then what is our slope? Our slope, we take one of the 2's. I'll take this one, subtract the other 2, and then 2 minus 1. We get 0 over 1. Our slope is 0. It doesn't change. And that's all we did in class, so that's all we're doing on here.